The not star of the day, I thought, was Sierra Leone in the New Orleans Classic. Now, I don't want to go totally negative on this. I've been a little bit skeptical of Sierra Leone throughout his 3-year-old year. I think he's a nice horse, but I think the hype train around him is like a little based on his purchase price and that he's like a deep closer and people like deep closers. But I think, other than the Breeders' Cup Classic, he hasn't where he got a complete pace meltdown, and he still ran well, obviously, but got the right setup. He just hasn't been that horse against the top of his division. And this year, his division is the older horses, and he got run off his feet by Touch Upon a Star. He didn't even get second. He was third. Hall of Fame was second. But, I'm curious to get your thoughts, John. But I also want to give a tip of the hat to the Delhomes.
Yeah.
Jake,
yep,
former Super Bowl finalist, Super Bowl runner-up quarterback, Jake Delhomme for the Carolina Panthers, and his brother Jeff, who trains the horse. This was a really nice horse that they've done a really good job with, a $15,000 yearling all the way back in 2020 rather.
Right. Now
6 years old, went wire to wire, 109 buyer. Tim Thornton, the local jockey, was aboard. So I love stuff like that, like the David versus Goliath of racing. Like that's why we keep coming back. And I thought that was a really impressive performance. And now, he put the first flag in the ground for the handicap division. Now, I know we expect there to be like a lot of top horses with fierceness coming back. We thought Sierra Leone would come back with a big race. There's Forever Young you think about, and there's a couple others in the older horse division. But a 109 buyer and 148 and change at Fairgrounds, why can't he compete and win some grade ones this year?
Yeah, I think, Joe, that the big story, like you said, is more Sierra Leone not hitting the wire first than Touch Upon a Star winning. And I know when you and I were talking about what topics are we going to go over at the show, we were kind of joking around about, is Sierra Leone the most disrespected $6 million earner ever? And maybe, primarily because he costs $2.3 million. Again, another FASIC graduate. But I've been on his bandwagon. I've liked the way Sierra Leone runs. As you mentioned before, people, are either they really love front running sprinters or they love dead closers, because those are the most exciting kind of horses to have. The bloom is off the rose a little bit with Sierra Leone in my estimation. And you can say, well, maybe he needed one. Maybe it was a rust knocking type race, and they're not really concerned about what's happening at the end of March. They're more concerned about what's going to happen in September, October. Saratoga, September, October. Those are really the races that they're shooting for, and all of that may be true. But when you run against a field like this, and you're a Breeders' Cup champion, and you just did it 4 months ago. It wasn't like he was a Breeders' Cup champion 2 years ago. You like to see a little bit more fire, in his belly when it came to running. I don't have an excuse for him other than maybe, this wasn't the most important race that Chad Brown and the connections were shooting for. But this was definitely a winnable race. And I think that there's a reason why they had him in this race, going 9 furlongs first time out, as opposed to, running him at Gulfstream or maybe a more speed favoring racetrack. So I think this was definitely on their calendar, whether it was on their calendar with 3 stars saying, we really want to crank him up for this or not. But yeah, he's been it's silly for me to say he's been a disappointment, because all he's done is hit the board basically every single race of his life.
He's a champion.
He's a champion, and he made $6 million. But you would like to see a little bit more fire. I would like to see a little bit more fire in his belly when you're running in this type of a race.
Well, and it's the thing, the thing I was saying about him last year is not that he isn't a talented horse. Like, he's clearly got a lot of talent. The problem is he's got no early speed.
Right.
And that's the excuse, but it's like it's a self-made excuse for him, because it was a 5-horse field. Touch Upon a Star did get loose on the lead in that race, but if he had more tactical speed, he could have adjusted and sat second and maybe won the race. But he just is so at the mercy of the pace, and just he's not Zenyatta.
Right.
He doesn't have that closing kick that's going to overcome a moderate or slow pace. Now, like you're saying, this was the first race of the year. This is a stepping stone for him. And I wouldn't be surprised to see him win some big races the rest of the year. But to me, it felt like a very familiar story from last year, where the pace isn't supersonic like it was in the Breeders' Cup Classic, and he can't adjust and he can't get there. So I just, it's, like you said, he's a champion. I don't want to go crazy about this, but a little bit vindicated at 1 to 5 when he ran third, but we'll see what he does the rest of the year.